Helicopters hovered overhead, watching their comrades in the 154th Battalion getting slaughtered, and refused to open fire. "I am not allowed to," one pilot said, "because of the international border." The unit, all battle-hardened Muslim soldiers drawn from the Soviet Central Asian republics, had fired the first shots of their country's Afghan war in 1979. Now, to avenge the deaths of their comrades, they defied the orders and targeted a Mujahideen base inside Pakistan. Finally, historians Lester Grau and Ali Jalali have recorded, an ice-cold voice spoke over the wireless. "I am tail number 25 and I am ready to fire. Give me the target." Last week, the United States Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction, or SIGAR, issued the latest in a series of reports explaining just how a national military put together over 2 decades at the cost of $88 billion imploded within weeks as the Taliban took over. Among other things, the reports have blamed President Joe Biden's morale-sapping decision to withdraw from Afghanistan in 2021, the dependence on technologies Afghan forces could not maintain, and poor decisions on leadership and tactics. The SIGAR reports are a model of honest introspection and careful study. The most important thing, though, is missing: the United States' failure to destroy the Taliban's sanctuaries across the border in Pakistan. The story of the Soviet battle I just told you about help understand why that's a key issue. Long ago, Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko lamented at a 1986 meeting of the Politburo, where its leaders concluded the war was lost. We spoke on the fact that it is necessary to close off the border of Afghanistan with Pakistan and Iran. Experience has shown that we were unable to do this. There are important lessons in that failure for all militaries fighting insurgencies with transborder bases. India is obviously among them. From the outset, the Soviet military understood that its real problems weren't with the Mujahideen, they lay across the border in Pakistan. In 1982, former KGB officer Vladimir Kozhikin has recorded, the Soviet military developed plans to seal the border with Pakistan by building a chain of watchtowers and minefields and then using airborne troops, I quote, to annihilate the partisan formations shut up inside Afghanistan. The plan, however, would have needed more than 3 lakh Soviet troops, far more than the political leadership would sanction and the country could afford. Large-scale mining of the border, the Soviet military's Plan B, did little to deter transborder movement. And as the United States enhanced funding for the Mujahideen, the lethal insurgency against the Soviet Union kept growing. From 1984, the Soviets launched a series of offensives targeting Mujahideen supply routes. These aimed at cutting off the insurgents from their bases in Pakistan. Large-scale use of air power, which included the carpet bombing of villages, created a 50-kilometer wide depopulated zone along the border. The destruction of Afghan villages, military historian Thomas Bruscino has observed, while morally reprehensible, did create problems for the guerrillas fighting deep inside the country. Technology, though, leveled the field again. The Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, supplied the famous FIM-92 Stinger man-portable air defense missiles, which made it dangerous for Soviet aircraft to fly low. That meant Mujahideen supply convoys could again resume crossing the border from Pakistan. Frustration grew among mid-level commanders in Afghanistan. In February 1985, Mujahideen Black Stalks, reputed though never proved to be Pakistan Army Special Service Group commandos, annihilated a company of the 154th Battalion. In defiance of express orders, the unit planned an assault on the Mujahideen base at Krer, across the border in Afghanistan. The initial assault went well, but a Mujahideen counter-attack using forces called in from the town of Bajaur in Pakistan trapped the soldiers of the 154. Even though the attack was a disaster, there's further evidence that raids took place in the following years. In December 1987, long after the Soviet Union decided to withdraw, the Soviet forces again struck at Krer, this time ambushing the Mujahideen in the darkness. The Mujahideen, Ali Jalali and Lester Grau have recorded, withdrew, only to return once the Soviets were gone. The Soviet High Command understood that this kind of fighting inside Pakistan would achieve little. To truly crush the Mujahideen, they would have to go to war across the border. But that would risk outright confrontation with the United States and a war the Soviets didn't want to pay for. Like everything else, wars have something to do with arithmetic. To fight insurgencies, conventional wisdom holds, militaries need 10 to 1 numerical superiority. Government forces, after all, have to guard infrastructure and population centers. The combined strength of the Soviet and Afghan government forces, expert Charles Dudik has said, never exceeded 2 lakh, pretty much the same as the Mujahideen. 85% of those forces, moreover, were committed to static duties, leaving less than 23,000 at any point for counter-insurgency operations. 23,000 against 2 lakh Mujahideen. Even in the face of these odds, Soviet soldiers fought heroically. A single company famously held off hundreds of Mujahideen at Hill 3234, holding the Khost Gardes highway and enabling their comrades to retreat home in 1988. These victories, though, were to little strategic avail. There is no single piece of land in this country that has not been occupied by a Soviet soldier. Marshal Sergei Akhромiev, architect of the military's Afghanistan invasion plan, said at the 1986 meeting. Nevertheless, he continued, the majority of the land remains in the hand of the rebels. There is no single military problem that has arisen that has not been solved, and yet there is no result, he added. From the outset, planning for the Afghan military did not include capacities to close the border with Pakistan. At its peak, the Afghan National Defence and Security Forces, or ANDSF, were some 63,000 short of their sanctioned strength of 350,000. The contrast with the Indian Army in Jammu and Kashmir is stark. Of an estimated 3,52,000 soldiers serving in the troubled region, and that's not counting central and state police, over 3 lakh are used just to plug the line of control today. American strategic planners, like their Soviet counterparts, understood the problem. In 2011, then Chairman of the United States Joint Chief of Staff Mike Mullen testified that the Taliban, and I quote, operate from Pakistan with impunity. Extremist organizations serving as proxies of the government of Pakistan, he said, are attacking Afghan troops and civilians as well as US soldiers. Technology, for a time, offset some of the Taliban's advantages. The withdrawal of the United States support, though, was a death blow for the Afghan armed forces. The withdrawal of US-funded contractors in 2021, an official study has noted, left aircraft overtaxed and the Afghan Air Force unable to operate. Taliban operations isolated ANDSF units, and chronic Afghan government failures to provide food or logistical hardware and manpower support to many units meant that Afghan soldiers quickly became unable to fight. Like so many insurgencies, think of the United States in Vietnam or the French in Algeria, both Afghan wars saw the superpowers score tactical battlefield victories for the government, followed by eventual strategic failure. The insurgents did not win. The powers they fought were worn down and eventually lost interest. Few militaries have really found solutions to these problems, but they're worth thinking about. Like the French in Algeria, India has tried building physical barriers along its borders with Pakistan. Although evidence suggests that such barriers can increase insurgent attrition, they're nothing like a total obstacle. Airstrikes and cross-border raids can have some effect too, as lessons from the Soviet war in Afghanistan to India's own experiences show, but their deterrent effect is often short-lived. Sooner or later, the problem is back because the sanctuaries across the border still exist. The United States, unlike the Soviet Union, could have used its vast coercive and economic resources to compel Pakistan to shut down the Taliban's transborder sanctuaries. It chose not to believing its relationship with Islamabad was of more strategic value than the war-torn country it eventually chose to abandon. The wisdom of that choice will, in time, reveal itself. I'm Praveen Swami, and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint.